And I say I will move the report, and let's get at it.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Brunton.
Mr. Chairman, will this start immediately if we get the 5 members in a council appointment, or can we get it going?
Well, that's something Mr. Crittenden will have to answer.
Through the chair, I'll have to rely on perhaps the clerk's department. What we have to do, our next step, as I believe after it's accepted here, we have to advertise in the paper for our members. I believe staff will have to go through and shortlist, and then I believe that list will come to council for approval. So once we get the members in place, I think we had talked about perhaps having a first meeting in September or October, because what we hope to do is to catch the capital budget process and have the advisory board perhaps have a say of what goes forward in that. But it will take a few months to get people in place. It's a process.
Mayor Luke?
I think Mr. Crittenden answered the question. I think when we had Mr. Lipset here and the discussion on when it would kick in was either at the first of 2018 or hopefully this fall, when the voting season is pretty well over. So, thank you.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm certainly going to support the recommendation, and I'm really glad Councillor Wells did speak with Mr. Lipset, and I'm glad that those folks are supportive. I'd like to just ask us to look at one clause, though, and I'm on page 52 of our agenda, which is page 1 of the terms of reference. And under item 1.2, where it says that the committee will provide advice and input, next one, 1.3. Communicate and make recommendations to council through the GM of Community Services with respect to matters and issues. Would it be possible, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Mr. Crittenden either agreeing or disagreeing with this, for me personally, I would like to have the advisory committee report to council at least once a year in person, rather than just through the GM. If the intent was that we would never see their face, we'd only get Mr. Crittenden's interpretation of their input, and I'm just teasing a little bit, but I think it would be helpful to me and to us as a council if their chair was asked at least once a year to come and make a deputation to council just on the year's activities or something like that.
Through the chair, I think that's a good idea. I have no problem with it. I am a little green or weak on setting advisory committees up. I'm not sure if we need an official council resolution for that, or whether that's something we get into the meetings and we can pick a date and have the advisory board come in. I'll maybe pass it to County Manager Mr. David Cribbs, just as his thought on that. I just don't know the answer. I don't see anything wrong with it, though.
Mr. Cribbs?
The short answer is we can accommodate anything this council wants. The medium answer is I don't know where the advisory committee is going to be meeting. Will it be at the marina?
I believe we're going to meet on Culver Street.
There is then, of course, the potential opportunity for a road trip by the council to see the facility that you're receiving the advice on an annualized basis. There may also be some logic and reason behind doing that. But we can most certainly accommodate a once per annum direct report to yourselves from the committee and otherwise through the general manager as appropriate. We can insert that in the terms of reference.
Mayor Luke, then Councillor Oliver.
I read through this agreement, so Mr. Crittenden, just a couple of housekeeping items. I hate to be petty, but we might as well catch them now. I don't know why on page 53 of 72, in other words, page 2 of the excuse me, terms of reference, in section 4, the length of term for the chair and vice chair is 1 year. Good. I have no idea why that needs to be repeated in section 8.1 and then again in 10.1. That's just my opinion. I'm not going to debate it. Excuse me. Also on page 55, which is 4 of 6, it's my school teacher in me, I apologize. Under meetings, 14.1, second sentence, the schedule will be determined at the first meeting. At should be in there. We might as well have it correct when it goes to committee. Thank you.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just back on my point earlier, I think I heard the county manager say that staff would be prepared to insert another little sentence under that 1.3 asking that the chair or his or her alternate report to council once annually. That's all I'm asking, and I think it would show the committee that we as council are genuinely interested in what they have to say about operations over the course of the year. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing nothing further, Councillor Wells, and I guess you will make those changes to the terms of reference, or whatever it's called. Okay. The staff report CDS 1709, Port Dover. Port Dover Harbor Marina Advisory Committee revised terms of reference be received, and that the attached revised terms of reference for the Port Dover Harbor Marina Advisory Committee be approved, and further that a bylaw number 2009-19 of the Corporation of Norfolk County be repealed in its entirety, and further that the necessary bylaws for the approval of the terms of reference be presented to council for adoption, and further that council direct staff to invite applications and nominations for committee membership in accordance with the approved terms of reference. Anything further? All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to Public Works. All the way stop. It's report PW-17-37. All the way stop conditions, Church Street / Mill Street, Delhi. Ms. Robinson.
Through the chairman to council, the staff report before you this evening is to request an all-way stop at Church Street and Mill Street in Delhi, or Church Street West and Mill Street in Delhi. As we reported previously to committee, we're currently going to be reconstructing that intersection and those two roads this year. We are going to do some road realignment in a very minor fashion, and once that work is completed, we believe that an all-way stop is warranted, and it will be a significant improvement to the traveling public in that area due to limited sightlines. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Columbus.
Mr. Chairman, this is an excellent suggestion by staff. It is an issue there. This Church Street West, there's quite a slope on it going downhill, and the people coming from Mill Street actually cut the corner. It's kind of hidden, so this will improve the safety of that intersection. Plus, there's been a triple postal mailbox installed to the south, and people go there to get their mail, so it'll enhance pedestrian safety as well. So I will move the recommendation as printed.
Further from anyone? If not, Councillor Columbus has moved the staff report PW-17-37. All-way stop conditions, Church Street / Mill Street, Delhi, be received as information, and staff be directed to install an all-way stop condition at the intersection of Church Street West and Mill Street in Delhi, and further that a bylaw be passed to establish an all-way stop condition of Church Street West and Mill Street in Delhi. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to staff report PW-17-36, award of contract PWES 1702, curbside waste and recycling collection 2017 to 2024. Ms. Robinson.
Through the chairman to council. Before you this evening is the award report. In accordance with the purchasing policy, we've brought this report forward. It was issued for the contract to go out. What we're asking for the award this evening is the same service that we currently are experiencing now. We have made provisions for provisional items in this contract, and staff will be bringing them forward at future dates for council's consideration for whether or not they wish to implement them at this time. We did comply with the purchasing policy. There were 5 submissions. There is sufficient funds in the budget for next year's and would be included in the future years. I would also like to point out that this was one of the contracts where we were consolidating services and changing time frames, et cetera. And we have realized a substantial savings that we're anticipating as a result of consolidating these contracts and sending them back out. And we're very pleased that we're expecting to be looking for the 2018 year that we're looking at a savings in the neighborhood of $500,000 to $750,000 as a result of this contract. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Wells, then Mayor Luke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Chair, sorry. I don't want to get you promoted. You can't afford it. You can't live on the salary that the mayor has. Now,
I can try.
Mr. Chair, just a question. Why did we have the cost in pink paper? This is kind of a different method, and I just wondered why we did that.
Through the chairman to council, in accordance with our purchasing policy, we don't release the price per point for all of them. We only do it for the one that we're recommending award to. Council had specifically requested additional information in this case. It needs to be kept confidential, therefore it was circulated in 2 separate reports because it was additional information that was requested that wouldn't be normally disclosed outside of an in-camera session.
And is that the way we have normally done it, Mr. Chair?
You're asking me, I'm not 100% certain.
Well,
This
would
is
you
something
ask the-
I'll ask Ms. Robinson.
Through the chair to council, we would not typically have disclosed that information. It is available, but it's not something that we disclose in a public document, any of them. And so as such, but council was very specific that they wanted that information as part of this, and so that's why it came separately as a separate memo.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I guess that's one of the disadvantages of getting old. I thought we always put the price in so everybody would know what it was. But I stand corrected, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mayor Luke.
Just a very quick question. I wasn't surprised. I was just curious why a 7-year contract. It seemed unusual. Usually they're 5 or 3. Is that something you came up with through the chair, Lee?
Through the chairman to council, it is an unusual length of time. This is a very difficult contract when we're issuing this particular one. I've had experience doing several of these. We need to ensure that the length of time is sufficient to ensure that if they have to purchase new vehicles, they have the ability to recover the cost throughout the duration of the contract. If we don't do that, we find that the prices get substantially higher because basically a vehicle that after 7 years, 5 to 7 years would be expired. If it's too long, we get sort of a vehicle and a half out of it, and if it's too short, we pay the price because we're paying for 5 years of a vehicle, but we have to pay for it in 4. So it was a very strategically scheduled contract to ensure that we got the best cost savings we could possibly get.
Good answer. Thank you.
Councillor Black.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Through you to Lee. And you've heard me say this before. I've sat and watched recycle vehicles go down the road and material blow off. I've gone down my own road picking up loose stuff that I identified that was in my box. Also, we've had over the years many calls, and I think Councillor Brunton or Mayor Luke has received them as well. The recycle facility itself, all the delinquent material up and down the road around there. So I guess my question is, will we have a special design truck that will accommodate this material without it blowing off? I have seen some trucks. I saw one up by Staples there. They were doing a Crime Stoppers fundraiser, and the material, the truck was designed so the material went in, it was totally enclosed, there was no way of it getting out. So that's my question. Will these trucks contain the material?
Go ahead.
Through the chairman to council, the current contract as well as the future contracts do require the use of items that contain the recyclable material. Unfortunately, the weather doesn't always cooperate with us.
So what does that mean?
What does that means that much of a lot of things that are blowing around are not coming off of the collection vehicles. Some of the stuff is coming off of the bins that are put out. There's a lot of different sources for that. Excuse me. So we do require that, and we do stay on the contractor to ensure that that their operators operate the vehicles appropriately.
Yeah.
But there is recyclable material that is blowing around that's not related to our contractors' activities.
Okay, but if you heard what I said, I've watched these trucks, and I've seen material coming off them. So I know they're coming off of the vehicles. I agree with you that in other situations, they may be coming from someplace, but I watch it.
And certainly, when we see that, we would ask that you report it to us with.
And I have reported
Yep,
it.
correct, and we stay on the contractor, but it's a very difficult industry to have everybody perfect 100% of the time. They do their best, but there is no equipment out there within an affordable range that, no matter how it's operated, ensures that nothing happens. It has to be opened up in order for material to be placed in it.
Okay, but once it's in the vehicle, isn't it supposed to be contained within the vehicle? I watch the trucks go down, and it comes off as they're driving down the road. I can watch, as far as I can watch, I can see it coming off.
Yeah, and this is for the award of the contract. That is really a performance issue. They're not supposed to have any of that occurring. And if we have to deal with that, we will deal with that outside of that. But the report here tonight is to deal with the award of it.
Okay,
and there are terms in the contract that require them. We do not have requirements in our contract for them to supply a very specific truck. If we had requested that, we would have had to come forward with a report to single source that information. For council would have had to approve that in advance. We don't have the ability to be that specific by advising them that they need to have specific trucks. We do advise them that the material all has to be contained within their vehicle.
Okay, but if you said that that's not part of this, it is to me. If you want my vote, I want a vehicle that's going to pick up the material, contain it in the truck, and deliver it, and not distribute it throughout all of Norfolk County in our ditches. Honestly, a lot of the stuff that's in our ditches right now, I believe, comes from the recycle trucks.
Through the chairman to council, unfortunately, staff didn't receive direction from council to specify specific trucks in the issuing of this, so that is not included in this.
Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Lee. Lee, first question I have, I guess, is the MRF is operated by who right now?
The MRF is operated by HGC.
And they will, as of what, October, will no longer be collecting?
That is correct. They have a different contract to operate the MRF.
Okay. And is there provisions in this contract where, and I guess it's the Bono, can he sublet?
There are provisions that with the county's permission, they can sublet. So they can't just assign it to somebody. They have to, if it was not disclosed in their original bid, they have to receive county approval in order to sublet the work to somebody else.
Okay, so as of now, HCC will be no longer, I assume, be the collector on it. What is it, October 1st?
Yes, as of the start of the new contract, HGC will no longer be doing our recyclable collection, and it is effective October 1st.
Okay, well, my concern too is the MRF is a mess again out there as far as garbage or papers blowing around, and seems that we're always on to that to have it cleaned up, and I get those complaints out there from the people directly across the road both ways. So anyways, maybe you could look into that. My other questions are, and I do have a concern, how is the other things you mentioned in there that, what do you call them, things you're going to try and implement? What are they throughout the course of this contract?
There's a variety of things that we included as provisional items. I know that there has been some discussion with respect to the solid waste study that we're working on in 2017 with organics collection. There's a variety of different things that we can do, waste reduction strategies, all of that sort of thing. Every other week garbage collection. There's a ton of things for council to consider as a result of the studies that we've approved. Because we are aware that this is going to be a 7-year contract, we included some of the provisional items in this one so that we would not have to renegotiate with the contractor after the contract had already been signed.
So are these initiatives to reduce our volume? Basically in terms of what we pay per, is it by per ton now? It doesn't really say in this report. Is the regular garbage curbside by the ton?
That is correct. It will be a payment by ton. And so the idea of the initiatives that we've included is as a result, is in an effort to reduce the amount of tonnage that we generate as a municipality.
So the figure we see in there is about $2 million, if I recall, per year. And that increases by the CPI, whatever that might be per year. So in a 7-year, we're looking at, not counting any initiatives you get in terms of reduction, probably $14-15 million. Is that safe to say?
Through the chairman to council, approximately, for a rough estimate, yes, that would be reasonable.
Yeah. Well, I found it somewhat disappointing, I guess, and it's not your fault. I guess it's the purchasing policy that, you know, we don't get the information, I don't feel. Even the report that we got in our pink binders, to me, is not suffice, because the way I look at it, it's staff that are reviewing all these proposals, and I'm not saying you did a bad job, but it'd be nice as council if we could see that information. And maybe it's something we have to discuss. I understand we're going to review our purchasing policy, but I'm not saying it's wrong, and I guess if we didn't have all these points per, whatever you call it, for the evaluation process, the price of $2 million, would that still be the low bid?
Go ahead.
Through the chairman to council, I'm not sure how to ask that. This is a request for proposal. Proposals are based on a point per, excuse me. And it complies with the purchasing policy, and that's the one that's been updated. And we don't evaluate it on a dollar basis. We evaluate it on the merits of the proposal compared to the value. So I can't articulate what the lowest is, because, you know, that's like asking if grapes, you know, you want to buy grapes, but are the bananas cheaper? But they're not the same. They're not the same thing. You're not comparing the same thing. That's why we've created the price per point. This is not a tender. It's a proposal. They're not bidding equally.
I'm not asking that. What I'm asking you is that $2 million figure we have, is that figure quoted by this successful bidder? Or is it arrived at through discussions and evaluations by 3 or 4 people that say, well, this, I like this, I don't like that, and we ended up with this specific contractor and a price? My question is, was that price in his bid?
Yes, the price is contained in his bid. There's a valuation criteria that's applied to everything, including the price that they've provided in the bid. And so all of the prices and all of the technical scores are compared equally, and the price is provided by the contractor.
Okay, so if I go back and ask that question again, if we threw out all this evaluation and points and the 2 envelope system you refer to, this bid of $2 million would still be the lowest. Is that correct?
I'm not sure that I'm able to disclose that information outside of in camera, because that information through our process is not something that I can disclose in open session.
Okay, so the problem is the purchasing policy. Thank you.
Well, is someone prepared to move this, or Councillor Oliver? Further, no questions? Councillor Oliver has moved that staff report PW 17-36, award of contract PWES 1702, curbside waste and recycling collection for 2017 to 2019 be received as information, and that contract PWES 1701 for curbside waste and recycling collection 2007 to 24 be awarded to Norfolk Disposal Services Limited and further, that a bylaw be prepared authorizing the mayor and clerk manager of council services to execute the contract documents. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to staff report PW 17-38, award of contract for PWE 1731 sidewalk reconstruction. Ms. Robinson.
Through the chairman to council. The report before you is for the award of the sidewalk reconstruction for 2017. Again, we have complied with the purchasing policy. We received 4 bids. There is sufficient funds. In fact, we actually have excess budgeted amounts, and we've received some extremely good pricing. We are also going to request that some additional work be done because during the budget deliberations, council had authorized us with an additional $75,000 for sidewalk, and staff would like to take full advantage of the additional $75,000 that's available, as we have many, many projects that need that additional money. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mayor Luke.
Mr. Chair, I would like to move the recommendation in here, and I just have one comment, if I may.
Go ahead.
Page 2, and I read through this, there are 6 identified sidewalk replacements, and I am very pleased that everything that's identified in here is going to be done, but I can't tell you how pleased I am to see that small section from Gilbertson up to McDonald's on the Queensway with the traffic and pedestrians. I'll tell you, I could go over there and hug Lee for that, but I won't.
Okay, Wells, Black, and Height. Wells, you're up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, you can't help but notice on page 67, with regard to the Argyle Street in brackets, Simcoe, mid-block crossover, we budgeted $100,000 and it came in at $6,000. So,
go ahead, Lee.
Through the chairman to council, that we had, if you recall, we had many debates over what we were going to do in that area. Council made a decision after the budget had already been approved and had significantly reduced the amount of work that was going to be required in that area. So therefore, the amount that came forward is reasonable, but the budget had already been approved before council had decided the full extent of the work required for that project.
So we changed the scope.
That is correct. We reduced the scope of the project.
Yeah, well, and I can accept that, because to go from 100,000 to 6,000 is a pretty serious reduction. I was going to congratulate you, but now if we change it, I'm not. Thank you.
Councillor Black, Height, and then Brunton.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you to Lee, and I'm not quite as exhilarated as the mayor about the Queensway East Gilbertson Drive, because I'm not too sure I understand why we are doing that. Maybe there is a good reason for it, but at that corner, there's a light, and you can cross over, and there's a sidewalk that goes all the way up. And I know this area here, it's not a slope. I can see where that'd be a problem to put a sidewalk across the car dealership there and over. And I was going to ask, how far does it go? And I guess the mayor said to McDonald's, I guess. That's even steep there and all the way. But why would it be just a short span and not, if we're going to put it in, if we can put it in, without incurring huge costs because of the slope there, why wouldn't we put it in all the way out to the next light at the mall? So I guess those are my questions to Lee, so I can understand this better.
Sure. Through the chairman to council, we're putting it in because the council policy requires sidewalk on both sides of an arterial road, and the Queensway is an arterial road. So that is exactly why it's going in. This is also a missing section. It's a heavily traveled pedestrian section. We receive on average about 30 to 40 requests for that piece of sidewalk on an annual basis, and it just made the most sense to pick off areas of on an arterial road that's being highly requested for that, and there is a large volume of pedestrians in that area who currently walk on said slope but not on a sidewalk.
So you won't have any problems, I guess, getting it in there because of that slope?
We certainly reviewed it in anticipation to make sure that we could put it in because we were quite anxious to put it in as well, and we will be able to accommodate it.
Okay, and what about going all the way out to the next light? Like you're just going to do halfway and then maybe later on the other half?
My understanding is that this is the missing piece.
Okay.
There is a, like the pita pit, and all of those already have sidewalk there. We're just what's the name of the Chinese food restaurant that's there?
Yin's.
Oh wait,
Hoy's.
yes, thank you.
It's now Hoy's, it was
yes,
Yin's.
Yes, no, and I was struggling a little bit because the name had changed, but the idea is to fill in that missing piece through that area.
Okay, well, now I'm just as happy as the mayor.
Councillor Brunton, then Mayor Luke.
Just, I'm not clearly on, where's the section on Donnelly Drive? Where does that piece come into play? Yeah, there's a sidewalk down there.
No,
Go ahead.
there's a missing section on Donnelly Drive. This is actually the separate project that council authorized be installed.
I just wonder where it is on Donnelly, that's.
Yep. It goes to Woodway, yes, you're correct, it goes down to Woodway Trails.
Well, there's a section already in, all past Hydro 1, all the way down there. Is it
Yes.
from the hydro plant back to Lyndale Road or Victoria Street?
Yes,
That section, past
Yes.
the old reformer office?
yes.
Oh, okay. On, which, you know which side or?
I don't know which side of the road off the top of my head. I would suspect that it's probably going to go on the east side, given that that the existing sidewalk to the south is on the east side, but I do not know at this point.
Yeah, right, okay.
You done, Councillor Brunton? Mayor Luke?
Just to answer Councillor Black's question, and it is a good one. I get complaints from pedestrians who walk, and more so from seniors who are mobile because they're electric scooters. So here's the problem. You come up from, Norfolk Street direction and head east. You get up as far as Gilbertson, and that's where your scooter ends, unless you cross to the south side with the light. Then you travel east. Now the fun is, how do you get across the 4 lanes on a scooter during lunch hour or busy times at McDonald's? It's pretty tough. So this will enable this little section to go from Gilbertson on the north side from the light and continue across the GM lot to the sidewalk that is at the car wash, Chinese restaurant, pita pit, and a small section of McDonald's, and you're there. If you want to travel by scooter or foot up to the Canadian Tire Superstore area, you can cross on foot or by scooter at Gilbertson Light, head all the way east to the lights at the Canadian Tire to go across to the north should you wish to go to the bank or onto the Superstore. This is such a key part of sidewalk for many people to get to McDonald's. That's the bottom line. Thank you.
Mayor Luke has moved that staff report PW 17-38, award of contract PWE 17-31 sidewalk reconstruction be received as information, and that a bylaw be prepared authorizing the mayor and clerk manager of council services to execute the contract with the firm of Autoform Contracting for contract PWE 1731 in the amount of $309,246.30 excluding taxes. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on, last one. Staff report EBS 1736, and I believe our deputy clerk is going to take this one.
Thank you. Through the chair. Before you is a report EBS 1736 respecting meeting start times pilot project. Since August of 2016, Council and Council and Committee have been doing trials of 3 p.m. starts. The 3 p.m. start time was a Council-led initiative that came after Council Services' proposal for a 9 a.m. start for Council and Committee was defeated. The 3 p.m. start time has been successful, so Council Services is recommending that it be adopted in the procedural bylaw. The county's public notice policy, bylaw 2008-25, requires posting of notice to change the procedural bylaw on the website for 2 weeks prior to any change. So if council approves the resolution, that will occur, and we'll bring forward an amending bylaw. In addition to the permanent adopting of 3 p.m. starts, we're also looking to begin another trial in August. If this trial is approved, we'll see a 2 p.m. start. We did feel that public meetings would have to be slightly advanced to avoid agenda gaps in instances of a lighter agenda, and also to ensure that there would be enough time to address deputations and planning matters prior to the hour of adjournment. To achieve this, we're recommending moving deputations and public meetings up to 4:30 for this trial period. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Mayor Luke.
Thank you. Just if I guess I have some comments, but this is question time, but I do have a question. Through the Deputy Clerk, I think we've shown that even with our 3 o'clock starts, we can accommodate somebody who is requesting a deputation but cannot be here at, say, 4:30, that we could accommodate them. We have that flexibility, I think, with council to... Somebody couldn't be here at 4:30 for deputation, could actually move them later into the agenda. I'd like the Deputy Clerk to comment on that.
Through the chair to the mayor, yes, that is correct. We have been able to accommodate those instances in the past.
Thank you. Further? Oliver, then Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was one of those ones that I think have spoken previously about going back to our original time of 5 p.m. and that would still have been my preference. I think in light of what we're doing and people are getting used to the 3 p.m. start, I appreciate that staff are recommending that be our permanent start time. So having said that, Mr. Chair, I see no particular benefit at all in creating another new trial period with another new time at 2 o'clock. So I can support the resolution that's on in the report, other than that paragraph 3 that says about the notwithstanding clause, another trial period of 2 p.m. running till the end of the year. That I can't support. It's going to confuse people. I'm not sure it's going to accomplish anything if we're permanently establishing 3 p.m., which we seem to be doing as our start time. So I support the motion other than that clause.
Councillor Wells.
Thank you very much,
Making a motion.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we are very fortunate at this particular time to have councillors who have the flexibility of whether we start at 2 or whether we start at 3. And Mr. Chair, I don't really care whether we start at 2 or 3. I will certainly go with the majority. However, Mr. Chair, I would have great objection if we set this time for the new council in 2018, because I think we don't want to do anything that is going to discourage people from running. Let it go back to 5 o'clock. Let the new council decide on the start times, rather than eliminating people who, because there are people who work, and they can't all get off at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, Mr. Chair. So for this one, I don't have a problem, whether it's 2 or 3, but certainly, as long as you understand that I will not be supporting the new council, this going over for the new council. I think that's unfair.
Councillor Black.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the clerk, Jill. I understand that it's probably a benefit to staff. It's probably a benefit to council as well, that staff are more accessible, and the late nights, I get that, and I appreciate that. But did we ask the public, or the second issue is that I was going to bring up was the same one that Councillor Wells just mentioned. You know, if we have a new council, I mean, I think right now we're able to all be here, but what if there's somebody new and they're working and they can't make it during the day? So that's going to create a problem. I mean, I don't have any problem with the setup the way it is, but did we get any public feedback? What did the public have to say about this? Or did we get that at all?
Through the chair to Councillor Black. I'm not sure in the way of formal feedback as far as, sending out a survey or anything like that, but we do work with the public on a daily basis in the clerk's office, and we do advise them as to meeting times and try to be as flexible, as we mentioned with Councillor Oliver earlier, to their schedules. So honestly, we haven't really run into anyone that's been a problem as far as making a deputation or providing public input at this time with the 3 o'clock start.
Yeah, okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I do like the idea of ending earlier, that's for sure. And I'm going to move the recommendation just to see where it goes.
Councillor Columbus.
Well, I was going to move a recommendation that was different than what Councillor Black, so I'll have to hold off. I was just going to recommend the first 2 paragraphs of that recommendation.
Mayor Luke.
Thank you, and certainly we all have a different idea, and they're all good ideas. I have to be honest, I will be supporting the recommendation for this trial period from the 1st of August to the end of December, which for the most part, seeing that August is only 2 meetings and December 2 is 16 meetings of trial. We went from a 5 o'clock start to 3. Have there been complaints? I haven't received one. And that's not to say that people haven't, but I have not received one. Public seem to get here when it concerns them with the 3. I like the earlier finish of 8 than 9. But I think if every member of this council can be here at 2 o'clock, I think we should try it. I really like the 3 to 9 as opposed to the 5 to 10:30. And then in December, we can decide whether we want to go back to 3 or 5, or it doesn't matter. So I'm willing to try it. The other thing I wanted to mention, Mr. Chair, is on the second page. You've read the report, so it says that in most instances, employees are still reporting to work at regular times each morning, and I believe that that is referring to Wednesday morning after Tuesday night. And I can tell you, in my years of working in this building in the last 2.5 years, I am not aware of any situation where staff has not shown up for work at 8:30 the next morning, if not earlier. Our staff don't seem to be afraid of working long hours. And I've always had a concern that all the staff are here, even when they don't have reports. That specific CIC meeting, they're still here. So I've talked enough on this. I'm going to support the trial period. Thank you.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly hope I'm able to make enough money to retire this year, because I think that's the only way you can run it as a councillor. Should we move this ahead even more to 2 o'clock? This pretty much takes out all the working people, because honestly, you're not going to get a job that's going to let you miss so much time. If it wasn't for the fact I run my own business, no way I would do this. The amount of committees you're on, right? It takes me half an hour to drive in here from Port Rowan. So we might as well start at 9 o'clock. So at least I can get some work done in the day. Because, the working people, they can't watch it on TV. Is there a point of running as a councillor? There absolutely is not. When I signed up, it was 5 o'clock. And we just keep moving it forward, moving it forward, moving it forward. Are they going to stick around? I'm thinking if you signed up at 5 o'clock knowing you finished that work in town at 4:30 and it got bumped to 2, you're probably going to leave. You're not going to run again because you're going to get fired. So, I don't know, Mr. Chair, maybe we can talk about raises. Because I need to retire to run again. What can I tell you, Mr. Wells? But I'm not going to support this. I get a lot of complaints from people. They like watching the show in the evening. It takes the working people out of the game. I'm not going to support it. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to put my 10 cents in. I certainly don't want to change what we have done, and it's certainly, I agree with what Councillor Height has said. Sooner or later, we're going to have to go back, because if we're going to get people to run, it's going to have to be not during the day. It'll have to be in the evening again. Certainly, this will work for us. I wasn't in favor of that one, but it seems to have worked, and I will not support what's going to 2 o'clock. So, Councillor Black has moved. You want me to read it all? No? All those in favor of the report? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those opposed? It's a tie vote. Sorry. It's a. Let's do it again, sorry. I voted against, and it is defeated. Sorry. Yes. Okay. So, Councillor Columbus.
Mr. Chairman, I will put the recommendation on the floor. Those first two paragraphs that report EBS 1736 respecting meeting start times pilot program be received as information, and that the clerk be directed to present amending bylaw to the procedural bylaw 2015-25 to make the regular 3 p.m. meeting start time and 9 p.m. the regular adjournment time.
Okay. All those in favor? Sorry, you want to talk about it? Fine. Okay, go ahead.
Does that pass off the deputations still being called at 4:30, or does it revert to 5?
It would go reverts to 5, what we have done in the past. All those in favor? That is carried. Opposed? Okay. That is it. Moving on to other business. Councillor Height, any other business?
Sure do, Mr. Chair. I thought we were going to get a building stat report from DCS for last year's thing, the one the building inspector does. I haven't seen that yet.
Chris?
Mr. Chair, there was a final report that was submitted previously. We do them quarterly, so that paperwork is being completed. We will provide a first quarter summary to council at the earliest opportunity.
Did we get a year-end one?
Yes, there was a year-end report that was submitted. That's what we reported.
Okay.
I'll provide a copy to you if you wish.
Okay, good enough. And then I'm not sure if somebody else knows this. It's not my area. Black Creek Trail. There was a trail somewhere in Port Dover that used to exist, doesn't exist anymore. Something. I don't know, Mr. Cridland, do you know of that said trail?
Through the chair to Councillor Height, no, I don't, but I can definitely look into that first thing in the morning and get back to council with an email.
Good, that'd be great. And then, well, we mentioned earlier that it seems that we have a problem with our purchasing policy. I'm not sure the council's that comfortable with it. And I saw that the City of Toronto did an audit on a lot of their purchasing, and they found a lot of problems. Now, I know in our health department, they had an audit done too, and they found a lot of problems with our purchasing. I'm wondering if our county manager could speak on how you would go about getting an auditor to audit those particular instances.
County manager?
As a broad initial answer, it's early days, both for the county's new treasurer and for myself, but we've already had 2 meetings to discuss potential changes to our financial reporting and specifically around the use of auditors. So I would prefer, if you would allow, not to put the cart before the horse and give a direct answer to your question, because we're both sort of taking some tentative steps, and that's something we're cognizant of. I appreciate that's only half an answer, but we need some time to sort of each draw some conclusions before we can give you some good advice in that sort of regard. We are cognizant, though, of a general need to change our approach and hopefully, if not increase the use of auditors, increase the profile and this council's access to auditors of county operations.
Yeah, I can live with that. Did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the same note, I thought we were going to have the purchasing policy reviewed by council. I thought that was on the books. When does that come forward?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. Staff are currently undergoing a review of the policy, and it will be presented to council prior to the fall of this year.
What does that mean, like September?
I would hope that it would be before that, Councillor, but with the break, I would like to say before the fall, just in case it is later in the summer months.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, my
Go
last
ahead.
one is with the municipal flood response plan. I was looking for an update on that one.
Through the chair, we are, I'm trying to think of when we meet. It's coming right up. We do have a draft document, which is very high level. I'm hoping maybe Chris from planning wants to or has anything to add. But I would say after the next meeting, Councillor Height, we are very close to having a document to perhaps share with council. And I'm not sure if that document then needs to be shared with provincial authority or not. Chris is nodding yes.
Through the chair, you recall there's a four-prong. There's the planning staff are working with your conservation authority staff on the policy piece. Mr. Cridlin is working with fire EMS on emergency response. Lee Robinson is dealing with the strategy for infrastructure, and I think there was a fourth one in there. Anyway, that's all coming together, so you will see that shortly.
Okay, so when you say shortly, will it be before the first Wednesday of next month, before we have our conservation authority meeting?
Through the chair, no, it won't be. Our efforts are to try to get it to council before the summer recess.
Okay, will it be sufficient enough for us to start approving development applications? Because at the Conservation Authority right now, we're having hearings over these things, and the hearings are super time-consuming. And we're having more and more and more as the warm weather gets along. So next, like at the first Wednesday of the month when we have our first meeting, we're going to be there for the entire night. So I don't know, at that high-level plan that you speak of, is that going to free up some of the stuff, or is that just, here's what we need to work on in the future?
Through the chair, the goal of the policy, the document, the final deliverable, is going to hopefully satisfy the province, and it will satisfy our requirements and the CA's requirements so that applications that come forward within those zones will basically be supportable by your staff so they can move forward, which would avoid those board hearings that your conservation authority has been dealing with.
Okay, so then while I was talking to some of the other guys on the board, we were hoping that maybe Mayor Luke would send a letter to the Conservation Authority with an update on where staff is at so that we didn't have to have all those board hearings, because we know you guys are working on it, but because we don't necessarily have proof that you're working on it, it's stalling everything, and it's a huge mess. So I don't know, is this...
Well, through the chair, please be assured when staff are telling you that we're working on it, we are indeed working on it. And we're dealing with that with all the other competing priorities. It does take time, and it is important. I know it's important to you, and it is important to us. We will provide, as Mr. Cridlin said, there's another meeting coming up shortly, and we'll look to see if we can have some sort of draft document so you can see exactly where we're at with that.
And then I'm not sure, maybe the mayor I could ask him about a letter, or have council support us sending a letter to the board?
Mr. Mayor?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I take direction from this council. What their wishes is, I try to deliver.
Go ahead.
Chairman, as a member of the Conservation Authority, Councillor Height has hit it on the head. We are really getting snowballed there by applications. And that, I would say, in the last 4 applications, the access egress issue came to light. So we need that, and I think if council would support Mayor Luke asking or advising the board, it'd be great.
Councillor Columbus.
Well, as a member of the Conservation Authority Board, there's 4 of us on it from council here. You know, the only out we have right now is to go through the hearing process and work on getting that ingress and egress issue resolved as soon as possible to streamline the process. Until then, we've got to go through the difficult process.
Councillor Black.
Not really clear on the idea of a letter. Like, what good is a letter going to do? We have to, the purpose of a letter is not going to do anything to facilitate. So, yeah, question through you to Councillor Height.
Go ahead.
We feel at the board that we would have, I don't know, the ability then, knowing that there's a formal letter that the plan is being worked on, to pass these board hearings. Otherwise, another option we have is just stop all development and tie up everything until there is a plan in place.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that explanation. I couldn't support a letter. I mean, a letter, and then you start to act upon that, make decisions based on a letter without the actual plan, that would get you guys in real big trouble. So I think you're going to have to wait it out. Just tell the Conservation Authority that, yeah, council's working on it, and once you have it, then you can deal with it at that time. But I can't see how a letter, I just wouldn't support that. It's going to put us in trouble and LPRCA.
Councillor Height, do you want to put something on the floor? That's basically the only way we can do it, I guess. I'm not sure you're going to get anywhere, but...
I do want to put something on the floor, but we can't do a motion because it's another other business. So,
Okay, true. So it'll have to be brought forward through a notice of motion, I guess, is the best way to do it.
no, I thought we've done this in the past under other business, just to ask the mayor,
Ask the mayor.
right? I don't remember a formal motion for a letter.
Well, I have to agree with what Councillor Black has said. I mean, a letter from the, really doesn't carry, it'll carry some weight, but what we're talking about is the actual report. And without that report, I'm not even sure the mayor would even, would do that. I don't know. I guess I can ask you that, Mayor Luke.
Well, again, in direction of council, if it's a letter to say to LPRCA that this council and staff are working on getting this accomplished ASAP, I mean, you know, I can write that letter, but I don't think it tells you anything. Our staff are saying it's coming, it's taking some time, but, you know, I don't want to send a letter that promises something we don't deliver. That is, you know, unless there's a specific timeline I can put in the letter. I don't mind writing letters. I'm not sure what assurance I can, as the mayor, give LPRC other than what staff tell me that they're telling us here right now. And I know it is frustrating. Can't imagine. Just, yeah, sorry.
Further to that, we do have the option of just refusing all applications, sending them back to Norfolk County and say, you need a plan. You've known you've needed this plan since 1989. Here you go on your lap. What I'm looking for is a solution. Right? We know staff, before you raise the causeway by a meter, if that's what it takes, that could be 5 years down the road. So we stall all development until then. Or we come up with a safe house. I'm guessing that at some point in time, staff to find the high point and long point for a safe house is going to take more than a month or two. So you can't have a plan without having the safe house. All we're looking for at the CA is we're working on a plan and we think we'll have it in place by a certain time. That's all we need from Norfolk County, or we can send them all back. It's not the CA that's the problem. It's the county not having that municipal flood response plan. And it's almost 30 years. Why we're in a hurry now? We need it.
I don't want to argue with you, but theoretically, we don't have a report, and it's great that the mayor can say we're working on it. Until we have that report, I'm not 100% certain that we're even getting any further.
Well, the GM at the Conservation Authority felt it would help, but I'll let it go.
Okay, further? Anything else? Okay, moving on. Councilor Sonnenberg. Other business?
Lee, could we have an update on the closing of the Villanova Works Yard? Be it temporary, but